Trust me on this. Get some control over the center with your pawns, then get your minor pieces out, then castle, and then, and only then, perhaps move your queen.
Thank you, Monica. In this lecture, we'll be learning why getting your queen out too early in the game is normally not a very good idea. Let's take a look at our first game. e4, e6, French defense. Black wants to go d5 next. d4, occupying the center with those two beautiful pawns. d5, and then the pawn on e4 is under attack, and white's got different options, like he can go knight to d2 or knight to c3 to defend that pawn, or play like in the game, e5, gaining space in the center. So black strikes in the center, good move, c3, and now black's next move is a mistake. Queen to a5. Black's getting his queen out too early. It is true that he's got a threat. He wants to take on d4, and then the pawn on c3 is pinned, so that means the queen would need to take back with queen takes d4, but then black would go knight to c6, forcing that queen to waste time. But this idea is very easy to refute. White can simply take on c5, threatening b4, and black's got a problem, because if he takes back with his bishop, then white goes b4, and black's losing a piece. This is what we call a pawn fork. So after d takes c, black is forced to take with his queen. White continues development, and now black goes bishop to d7, bishop to d3. White's got those two minor pieces out, and if you compare white's light squared bishop, it's got beautiful diagonals, with this one on d7, which isn't doing much, black's next move does make sense. Bishop to b5, he wants to trade it, but there is a problem, because white now goes bishop to e3, attacking the queen again, forcing that queen to retreat, and when the queen goes to c6, then we go knight to d4, attacking the queen, but also the bishop on b5 with two pieces. So that means black is losing material big time. Back to this position after bishop to e3, it is true that after d4, black is able to save the piece in return for a pawn, but I have no doubts that white's position is just too good after simply either pawn takes pawn or bishop takes pawn. He's won a pawn, he's got better development, and black has no compensation whatsoever for that pawn. So let's take a look at our next game. e4, d5, and here I think white should take, so that if the queen takes on d5, a premature queen move, then we go knight c3, forcing that queen to retreat. And that's what happens when you get your queen out too early. Your opponent's minor pieces will attack your queen will be forced to retreat and waste time. Instead of that, white chose a somewhat unusual move, knight to f3, sacrificing his pawn on e4. So black takes it, and then knight here. He wants to win his pawn back. Black should go knight to f6 or bishop to f5 here. Instead, he chooses queen to d5, getting his queen out too early. And this is not a good idea, because white can now sacrifice a pawn, because now the knight on g5 is protected, e4 is under attack, so black takes, and then we take back. And look at that, we've got minor pieces doing interesting things already. White wants to go knight c3 next move, and black should definitely play knight to f6 here, then we can castle, and if h6, we go knight to c3. Look at that, the queen is getting kicked around again, and if black now blunders with queen here, we've got a beautiful sacrifice, knight takes f7, and the whole point is, when the king takes that knight, then we go bishop here, attacking the king, but also winning black's queen. So back to this position after bishop to d3. Knight f6 was still the best move, but black decided to grab a pawn on g2. Not a good idea, because white simply goes bishop to e4, the queen is under attack, and that queen has nowhere to go. He's losing his queen, and that's why, in this position, black resign. So let's take a look at our next game. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop to b5. This is what we call the Spanish game, or Ruy Lopez. and black goes bishop to c5, we castle, and black could have played a move like d6 or knight to f6, but instead he chose to bring his queen out too early in the game. Wrong move. Maybe white could prepare c3 and d4 here, but instead he chose d3, which is a decent move, nothing wrong with it. So black now goes knight to e7, bishop to g5. Again, the queen is getting kicked around. Queen here, we develop. And then he goes d6, which looks like a harmless move, but in fact it's a blunder. Because now white's got a beautiful idea, knight to d5, threatening knight takes c7, forking the queen, the king, and the rook. And if he tries to protect his pawn on c7 with, say, king to d8, then we take this one on c6, and the one on c7 is pinned. Or if he plays queen to d7, then we take the one on e7 and the one on c6 is pinned. So in both cases, black is losing material. But there is an even worse move after knight d5. If black takes on d5, we take back, forking those two pieces. The queen must take back, and then bishop to c4. And the queen has nowhere to go. That queen is lost. And that's what normally happens when you get your queen out too early in the game.